Hey, what's happening, AP World? Chapter 35 for you today, World War II and the U.S.'s involvement. It's kind of a big chapter in the book, but I'm not really going to focus on battles because AP rarely tests on the battles. Rather, we're going to focus on the impact on Americans at home and their role in World War II. So let's get going. We're going to start talking about the home front. And there's a Selective Service Act that is passed, and after Pearl Harbor, it expands to men ages 18 to 65 that had to register. The first peacetime Selective Service registration was in 1940, and this is after Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, which expands to more men. The War Productions Board was an agency which helped private industries convert and manufacture goods for the war, and half of factory production in the United States went to the war effort. And there are two major ways that World War II was funded. One was from increased taxes, and you see here that 50 million Americans must fill out taxes. There were more taxes on the rich, and more people were qualified to pay taxes. But another huge way that the war was funded was from war bonds, and you would see posters all the time, everywhere, encouraging people to buy war bonds. And this one here says, "Don't let that shadow touch them. Buy war bonds." So you can see that the children are being surrounded by the swastika. Okay, let's talk about women in World War II. And there were women in the military. There were two groups that women were part of in the military. And the first was the WACs, or the Women's Army Corps. And the other was WAVES, which stands for Women Appointed for Voluntary Emergency Service. And there's several 100,000 women that were in each of those. The most famous idea of a woman from World War II is Rosie the Riveter. And here's this famous poster of her saying, "We can do it." And some women are moving to new communities to work in aircraft, munitions, and automobile industries. So women are now working in industries, especially with many men going overseas to fight. This poster, another propaganda poster encouraging women to work. This girl, the girl he left behind, is still behind him. She's a woman ordnance worker. We also see women working on aircrafts here, and propaganda urged women to work in industry, and films characterized Rosie, or women who worked in factories, as a heroine. And here's a woman building a bomb, and she looks very happy. Okay, World War II and African Americans. Nearly 1 million African Americans served in segregated units. So whites and blacks were not allowed to serve in the same units. There were separate white units and separate black units. It's not going to be until Harry Truman that we see the military is desegregated. That'll come in the next chapter. The Tuskegee Airmen were the first African American aviators in the U.S. Army, and they played a huge role in fighting. The Double V campaign is something that you should be familiar with, and this stood for Victory Abroad and Victory at Home, Civil Rights for African Americans. And here is a poster that says Democracy, Double Victory at Home and Abroad. So this was encouraging civil rights at home for African Americans. World War II and Native Americans. The Native Americans played a huge role in World War II. The Navajo volunteers, which were Native American tribe, were used as code talkers, and Japan was unable to crack their language that was used for military communication. So this Navajo is this very rare language that the military used to help send secrets along, and Japan was not able to figure it out. Really played a huge role, especially in the Pacific Front. We see a tough time for many Mexican Americans during World War II. The Bracero program was in 1942, and this was encouraged many Mexican to come to the United States to work, particularly in farms. About 150,000 of them worked in agriculture and the railroads in America. And in 1943 in LA, I can't tell you enough to know the Zoot Suit riots. This happens in 1943. Young Mexican Americans in Los Angeles became the object of frequent violent attacks by white sailors and Marines. So they were attacked, and it's called the Zoot Suit Riot because of the suit that they wore, which you'll see in just a second. And in June, riots broke out in East LA. 150 people are injured, 500 Mexican Americans are arrested. And here is the Zoot suit that they wore. Again, that's why it's called the Zoot Suit Riot. Please know that AP does test on that quite frequently. Japanese Americans also had a very tough time during World War II living in America. Executive Order 9006 by Franklin Roosevelt required the relocation of Japanese Americans on the West Coast to internment camps. In Korematsu versus the United States in 1944, a Japanese American sued the United States for Executive Order 9006 when all the Supreme went all the way to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld the internment camps for Japanese Americans and said that, in times of crisis, this is okay. Keep in mind, guys, these are not Japanese immigrants. These are American citizens of Japanese descent. And the significance of this, whether it's World War II, whether it's any war you can think of, during times of war, individual rights go down. They decrease. So please know that. Towards the end of the war, we're going to see the use of the atomic bomb, which really this idea had been around for a couple years. And the secret project to build the atomic bomb was called the Manhattan Project. And it was headed by this guy, J. Robert Oppenheimer. The Trinity test happens on July 16th, 1945 in Southwest America. And it is the first explosion of an atomic bomb in the history of the world. The U.S. had 3 atomic bombs. The first one was used at Trinity here, at the Trinity site. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, this occurs on August 6th and 9th of 1945. The 2 other atomic bombs were used on Japan, mostly on civilian targets. And if you look at this picture here, this is an aerial view of the cities, and they were just flattened, especially at ground zero where the atomic bomb actually hit. You see this poor woman has her dress patterns burned into her back from how hot the temperature was. A lot of people would run to the water, especially if they had severe burns on their bodies, without realizing that the water suddenly became radioactive. We have hundreds of thousands of people that die from the explosion and from injuries afterwards, and just as many, if not more, die from radiation poisoning over the years. So you'll often see a question about why did the U.S. use the bombs on Japan? What was the justification? Well, chances are the answer is going to be to save American lives. The U.S. did this to prevent a mainland invasion. Other reasons could be to demonstrate the power to the Soviet Union. The U.S. wanted to show that it is the #1 superpower at this time. Perhaps it would even be revenge for Pearl Harbor, since the Japanese attacked the U.S. on December 7th, 1941. And there was this very strong belief that the Japanese will fight to the last man, that they would not give up fighting no matter what. Some key conferences you'll need to know that occurred during the war. The Tehran Conference, which is held in Iran in 1943. This is the first meeting of Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin, the Big Three as they are called. And at this conference, Stalin makes it known that he wants to control Eastern Europe and he wants a divided Germany. He does not want Germany strong. He's fearful of Germany invading his country again. Churchill wants a free Eastern Europe and a strong Germany, so he kind of wants the opposite. And FDR is kind of in the middle and mediates between the two of them. The Yalta Conference in 1945. This happens about 2 months before FDR dies. This is a visually important conference. The Big Three meet again and they discuss plans for post-war Europe. Stalin agrees to free elections in Eastern Europe. He actually goes back on that a couple months later, but this really sets the stage for the Cold War, the Yalta Conference. They also agreed to divide up Germany into 4 zones, and what we know, or what we will know, as East and West Germany is established during this time. The Potsdam Conference, at this time, FDR has died, so Truman is now president. At this conference, they demanded the unconditional surrender of Japan. And they made it known that they would use the atomic bomb if necessary here as well. So what is the impact of World War II on American society? Well, this is what officially ends the Great Depression. There becomes a post-war economic boom, especially in the 1950s, that is unprecedented up until that point. Demographic shifts. We're going to see a couple demographic shifts happen during and after the war. One is the baby boom. A lot of these soldiers are returning home and they start families, and you see the largest amount of children being born in U.S. history. You will also see many people moving to what is called the Sun Belt, and it's called the Sun Belt because it's down in the south where it's very, very warm. So this area, ranging from California all the way over to Florida and South Carolina as well, is known as the Sun Belt. Industries begin to grow there. Many people are moving there. African Americans during and after the war are moving north. It's called the Great Migration. We also saw that after World War I. And we also will see in the coming chapters that the U.S. officially ends isolation. They're going to join alliances and different organizations that prior to World War II, nobody ever would have thought the U.S. would. And this is where the U.S. becomes heavily involved in world affairs. And after World War II, the U.S. and Soviet Union, who were allies during the war, begin to see their differences, and this is the beginning of the Cold War, which is what Chapter 36 will be all about. All right, that's it for chapter 35. If you have any questions, comments, please feel free to leave them in the comments. If you have not already, please take a moment and subscribe to my channel. Please spread the word. We are getting close to the APUSH exam. If you guys need anything clarified, please let me know. Ideas for videos as well. I really appreciate you guys taking the time watching. I hope this helped, and have a good day, guys.